Coming up today on Locked On at Texas Tech, a senior send-off in store Saturday from Jones Stadium. But who among those seniors could we send off again next year if they so choose? That and more next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to be with you again on Locked On at Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. And thanks as always to those making us their first listen on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. Today's episode brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. And these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. And that's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. So post your job for free today at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Chris, great to be back with you. And we are nearing the final dance at Jones Stadium this season. Hard to believe we've already arrived at this point, but we'll call it good on the regular season here in the LBK coming up on Saturday night. But also calling it good, well, on a broader front. Senior Day is upon us. Send-off Day is upon us. And, man, there are some special guys that are a part of this group, and we'll get to some conversations with some of these individuals on today's episode, both kind of longer term and shorter term, because not only do we have some eligibility considerations as it relates to another year, but we've also got, not necessarily in this same category, but also got some guys to consider just these final couple of weeks as far as redshirt possibilities are concerned. So decisions looming in all directions. We'll get to some of the specifics coming up, but how about a little of the emotion just to kick it off? Because, again, we're talking about some cornerstones of the program that will be honored coming up this weekend. Some of those specifically on the defensive side of things, and asked about that and dipping into some of that emotion this week was Texas Tech defensive coordinator Tim DeRuyter.
I'm going to miss these guys. You come in and you get a group of guys that, had struggled. And you get guys to buy into what you're doing, to buy into what Coach McGuire was preaching, and then to see them have success, it's just really, really gratifying as a coach. And you develop relationships with these guys, you get to know them, and unfortunately, they're going to be gone and going on to do greater things, whether it's continuing to play or not play. But this is a special group, because they really greatly helped get this thing turned in the right direction. I think our guys feel like we can play defense. We're not always going to be perfect, but we're going to play as hard as anybody that we play against, and we're going to create some problems for people. And, you look at the guys up front with Tony and Jay Boog, on the back end, in particular, Rabbit and T.O. and Malik and Rayshot. I mean, with some great people, as well as really good football players that they're going to go on and do some fantastic things. Like I said, hopefully still playing, but I know they're going to be successes as people.
And that's what makes coaches enjoy what they do. That's the reward for it. When you pour into younger people, and and sometimes you don't get results. Sometimes it doesn't get turned. Sometimes you don't have a great group of kids. But this is an example of And I think that because I think that I guess it was the Texas Tech football account, or maybe it was Joey or whatever. After that clip, it was like, we are a family, man. And you spend so much time around these people, and there's a lot of quality humans over there. And I know fans see the name or the number and you want results and all those things. But I know there's a lot of good kids, without trying to be corny, but like those coaches legitimately enjoy being around them, and like are gonna miss some of these rascals, man. And it was a big deal when a long list of names that he kind of rattled off right there. A lot of those guys could have left, but they chose to come back. And I think that Tim, Joey, everybody probably feels a bit indebted there. And I think that those players have squeezed a lot out of this place, and this place has squeezed a lot out of these players. That's the way it's supposed to work. But like, I saw this, I didn't know this. I was looking at these game notes. I didn't even like put this all together. Thought this was kind of interesting, a defensive note. Because if you win one more conference game, then you will have a winning conference record. That makes back-to-back years. You go back to 2009 since you last had a winning conference record. So we have this big gap. Add to that this defensive note. 6 of your 7 Big 12 teams you've held to 29 points or fewer. Last time that happened, 2009. So there's some progress. Maybe it's not significant to some. Maybe it's you have to squint hard a bit for it. Some people only consider progress in the win or the loss column. Just worth pointing out because there's some very meaningful dudes, man, that you'll say goodbye to Saturday that, I think of. I mean, how about this? Jalen Hutchings, who will play his last home game here. We're talking about UCF the other day. And we start talking about David Gibbs, who was the former defensive coordinator for Cliff Kingsbury, left here in 2018, went to Missouri, and now he's at UCF. Jalen Hutchings, keep in mind, 2018, Jalen Hutchings says, I'm really glad that David Gibbs is on that UCF staff. He's the one that recruited me.
Yeah.
He's the guy that recruited me. So in my last home game, the guy that recruited me, it's like it's full circle, but it just like, I mean, that's 2 head coaches ago. And how many defensive coordinators ago was that?
Don't make me count.
But you see what I'm saying? It just feels like it's such a long time. And some of these guys have been here for a long time, Cowan.
I hope we're talking about the program at large, being turned around and things like that. I know that we're kind of specifically referencing some things defensively, but there were visible signs of defensive progress for several years now. That actually began, in my opinion, at least under Keith Patterson. I think you really saw this team leaning on the defense, for better or worse, to take it as far as it was going to go. I remember back to some of those, maybe even towards the end of like the Cliff Kingsbury era, when you had guys like Jordan Brooks on a roster and things like that. It's kind of strange to watch all of a sudden the balance as to what was really paddling your boat as a team shift towards the defensive side. Again, for better or worse, they weren't filled with all-stars or dominant groups or anything, but you began to establish something, I think, as far as a culture. And these guys that we're talking about particularly up front, but don't want to leave out somebody on the back end like Rabbit or some others in between that are going to be honored this weekend, were a big, big part of establishing that culture and hopefully cementing it.
Think about it from a defensive standpoint. And you mentioned KP, who's going to bring in his Abilene Christian team into Lubbock, Texas next year to open up the season. But you're right. Keith deserves a ton of credit for what has gone on here defensively because he made people care about defense and all those things. But think about personnel-wise, because I think Jalen Hutchings has a chance to play in the NFL. I think Tyler Owens has a chance to play in the NFL. Rabbit has a chance to play in the NFL. Miles Cole has a chance to play in the NFL. But where have your best players in really recent years been? What side of the ball have they been on?
Yeah.
I mean, Tyree Wilson, Jordan Brooks. I mean, these are first-round types. I mean, you had a corner playing for the Eagles. You had, so it's just kind of interesting. There's so much offensive mindset around here because of all those years. But really, it's personnel-wise, the NFL would agree. I mean, you've had a lot of folks on that side of the ball that have been NFL caliber and not near as many on the offensive side.
Yeah, that has been interesting to witness and, not too bad as far as wanting to see some life or revitalization on the defensive side of things. Not too bad to see some of that represented on the next level and hopefully continuing here. And, yeah, you can talk about Jalen Hutchings' measurables or whatever you want. And I'm just going to continuously be reminded of, say, somebody like Kerry Hyder, who didn't have the measurables either. And I think he's still in the league. I'm not quite sure, but a motor that would never quit and something similar there. Chris, let's get to some of what is actually on the list here. 24 guys on this list, and some of them still have decisions as to whether or not 2024, if I wanted to make it more confusing for you, they could be Red Raiders here again. I know that I think Coach McGuire and the staff encourage them to go through this if they want to. If they've already got a decision made, I think Rabbit didn't go through this because he already knew last year he was going to come back. Either way, it's not just the guys we're talking about on the defensive side, but obviously you got guys like Baylor Cupp on the list, Austin McNamara on the list, Cole Spencer, Rusty Stats, Xavier White, Dennis Wilburn. Caleb Rogers. I mean, give me some of these guys who do actually have decisions in the air, or some that you think maybe are a little bit more intriguing to pay attention to, possibly as it relates to more time spent in red and black. First, today's episode brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. And these days, every new hire can feel like a huge gamble. And when we're talking about your business or livelihood, that's not ideal. But never fear, LinkedIn Jobs is here to help by finding the best qualified candidates available fast and for free, all on one easy-to-use and secure platform. With simple but specific targeting tools allowing you to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to consider. They go beyond just resume data by using insights from your job post, your company, and their 870 million member profiles to put your post in front of the most qualified candidates faster than anyone else. So go to linkedin.com/lockedoncollege today to identify the most qualified candidates and connect with them fast and for free. Just like a bad hire could sink your ship, the right hire could take your business to new heights this year. And it's no coincidence that small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. So post your job for free today at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. It's so easy. Even a Big 12 ref could do it. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free today with LinkedIn Jobs. Terms and conditions apply. Today's episode also brought to you by Athletic Brewing Company, changing the non-alcoholic beer game one drop at a time. And it's time for your game changers, plural, of the week. This week, it was the Tech offense taking over with 26 seconds left in a tie game on their own 25-yard line. Then Morton to Bradley for 16, 14 to Miles Price, and another 33 back to Bradley gives Gino Garcia the chance to nail a 30-yard field goal, making Tech a 16-13 winner over 16th ranked Kansas. And just like Morton, Bradley, Price, and Gino Garcia, Athletic Brewing Company is changing the game with non-alcoholic beer that tastes good. I'm talking great tasting, award-winning, and you're going to find more than 50 styles at athleticbrewing.com. But what you'll never find is a hangover with Athletic Brewing Company. So change the game by finding Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic beer at a store near you or online at athleticbrewing.com. And right now, first-time customers can get 15% off your first online order by using our code Locked On. That's Locked On for 15% off your first online order. Near beer, exclusions, and conditions apply. Find Athletic Brewing Company at athleticbrewing.com. Fit for all times. Give me some of these guys who do actually have decisions in the air, or some that you think maybe are a little bit more intriguing to pay attention to, possibly as it relates to more time spent in red and black.
Yeah, I think there were 5 or 6 guys that went through this ceremony last year that ended up coming back. And again, as you mentioned, Calvin, Joey says, please do it. Like, we want you to go through this. You never know what will happen. If you change your mind, great. Come on back. We'll do it again. Like, there's no harm, no foul here in going through this thing twice if that's what it leads to. But yeah, Tony and Jalen did that. I think your corners did it. McNamara did it. On and on it went. But like, you've got, I think this is right. So don't quote me, because I was already wrong this week one time. I screwed up there. Gino Garcia, don't send him out to graduation yet. He's got one more year here, folks. He'll be kicking field goals and all that for you one more year. So Gino, please accept my apologies. I was not ready to get rid of you. I swear it. But I misunderstood. I thought, oh, this was it, because he's been here. He's going to end up being here for 3 years. I just didn't know he had one more left, but thank goodness he does, because I think that's one less thing you've got to worry about next year, because he will be your place kicker if all holds true. But like, the following guys, I think, are going to go through this ceremony and then theoretically could come back. I think I'm right on this. I think it's this group: Baylor Cupp, Tyler Shuck, Taj
almost
Brooks.
did a spit take right there with my sweet tea.
Yeah, Taj Brooks, Matt Keeler, Caleb Rogers, Robert Wooten, and Monroe Mills. So let's take these one at a time here. Baylor Cupp, I gather that there's not an expectation that he will return. Whether that is, man, I'm kind of done with this, or I may try to go give it a shot to play professionally, or just go get a career and just kind of move on. He's dealt with a lot of injuries and things like that. I just don't get the sense that he'll be back, but I believe he's going to have that option to, continue his career here, or I guess theoretically could grad transfer and go anywhere he wanted or just move on. So, but I don't think he's back here next year. I think
Gotcha.
Tyler Shuck, I would expect him to kind of take it on to the next phase of his life, maybe go somewhere else if he wants to play in college one more year. Again, I think that you kind of, that would be a tricky deal, like trying to keep Barron here, and I just don't see that. I think this is Barron's show going forward.
What, Chris, can I ask you, is Shuck in a medical year, a COVID year?
He would be able to apply for a medical redshirt because
Okay.
he did not participate in enough competition
Gotcha.
this year, so they would give him his year back.
It's hard to keep track of all the
I
paths
agree.
to another year.
The
but
COVID stuff is the trickiest one.
and we're almost out of that, I think, but it's still kind of there for some.
And I think we have one more. I think next year is like the last year possible. I think. But yeah, we're getting closer to the end.
It's been kind
very
of
confusing. Yes,
it's been kind to us though. DeRuyter pointed that out this weekend with some of these guys. Like
yes.
this COVID eligibility's worked out all right for us.
Taj Brooks can return. Do I think he will? I just don't, folks. I think he's gonna. I think that his stock, if you will, it's about as high as it could get, and I mean that's my thought. Hey, would I love to see him running the ball for the red and black next year? 1,000%. Do I think Joey Maguire will say, Taj, please come back? We think it's in your best interest. I don't think he'll tell him that. I think he'll say, you're in your best interest. You've done so much for this place. Good luck. You've always got a spot here. And all that. If you just absolutely want it, however, go do your thing, young man. That's my opinion.
Okay, and let me throw one more wild card in.
Okay.
Matador Club, what you got to say about it? I don't know where Taj is slotted, but let's see what the contracts look like before we roll it out.
The problem for a running back, though, and I think that's, boy, this was a bad year to try to sell a running back on coming back when the NFL guys are scratching and clawing and almost coming up with their own separate group to fight the owners because that position has just almost been cast aside. You better go get whatever you can get.
And Jonathan Brooks is out there on everybody's mind right now.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess what, the one argument would be, well, you're not going to get that many years in the NFL. Maybe you don't even get a year. If you can get a year guaranteed and get paid. I mean, so I don't know. But I tend to think that his future is professional football after this season concludes.
There's got to be a wealthy clockmaker somewhere in Lubbock that needs a marketing deal.
Yes.
Taj time, baby. Let's not rule it out just yet. Okay. Sorry,
Matt Keeler. Matt Keeler's a sophomore. My guess here is that he's a backup offensive lineman. I think Matt will probably go somewhere where he can play more. Again, that's my guess. Caleb Rogers and Monroe Mills are both on this list. I'll be really surprised if they're not both back. And if they're not back, you got a problem because those are your two starting offensive tackles.
Oh, really? Okay.
I'm
surprised to hear that about Rogers.
Yeah, Rogers and Monroe Mills. I think they'll both be. I can't guarantee anything. Yeah. I don't. That's my. As we sit here on November the 16th, that's my thought is that where, what I think that they'll do. But again, you don't know. That's why you go through the ceremony. But I guess I gather maybe Tech football really thinks that they'll be back, but you just don't know. And then the other one is Robert Wooten. He's kind of he transferred here from Virginia Tech and it just hasn't really. It moved him around in some different positions. I would guess I would guess he goes and plays somewhere else, but I don't think it will be here. But there's a 24 names on this list. I think I have that right. Maybe there's somebody in there that there should be an asterisk next to it that's like, no, he's got another year or two to come back. But that I didn't discuss here. But that's what I can offer up right now. But anyway, it'll be interesting, and this will play out into If you're the program, though, when that portal window opens on December the 4th, these are the conversations that after the regular season ends, boy, you really got to start like, hey, man, I don't want to push you to a decision, but we really need to know.
Yeah.
Because if you're not back, we got to go find somebody, and we got to do it yesterday. you can hold the program up from moving forward if and so I would gather that they kind of have a feel for what a lot is going on here in a way.
Before we move on to the final portion of the conversation, can I just ask maybe a dumb question? But
no such thing. I ask them all the time.
You mentioned a sophomore. I'm seeing 2 juniors. How do these guys wind up on a senior day list?
Well, because I think in a lot of cases, eligibility wise, they are what you see listed. However, class wise or grade wise, they've already graduated type stuff. It is amazing because I learned this with my own kid who's a sophomore at Oklahoma State. They get out of high school with so many hours, I should say, of high school already, like toward college, that you can. And these football players, they don't ever stop going to school. When they show up here, a lot of them enroll early. Keep in mind, they go every summer and every fall and spring and then every summer. And boy, you can zip through pretty quick because you never stop going to school. So you can knock out 36 hours in a full year. Pretty,
Gotcha. Okay.
I mean, yeah. So I think they've kind of, there's a lot that's going on school wise, but what you're seeing listed is that's how many years they have left from a football standpoint.
That was a dumb question. That sounds like a question from somebody that thought everyone had to take 6 years, but I guess not. There's some exceptions to the rule.
Like you and I, man. I enjoyed all 6 too, man.
There's some exceptions to the rule, apparently. Okay, let's get a little more near term here because I'm really interested in this. First, today's episode brought to you by PrizePicks, the most exciting way to test your skills and play daily fantasy sports, and a great way to add juice to any game, anytime. And if you've got the game, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and a giant selection of players, projections, and stat categories are just part of what makes PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. So go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. That's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use our code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, right now, PrizePicks is going to match your first deposit up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDONCollege at prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Daily fantasy sports made easy. Let's get a little more near term here because I'm really interested in this. This is a kind of a new wrinkle as far as, maneuvering or managing a roster through a season here. We got a couple weeks remaining with UCF and the Longhorns. Hopefully we're talking about a bowl game after that. But as it pertains to this conversation, which is going to be a redshirt decision conversation, it only is impacted by the regular season. So, Chris, let's get to who is on this list. And I know that some, decisions have already been made. You've referenced already this week the thought of all in or going to the middle of the table with the chips this week to try to do what you can do to become bowl eligible. So let's kick it off with, at least to me, maybe the most intriguing example of this conversation, that being Jacob Rodriguez, who's a really good football player for you, has returned from injury, impacted the defense positively. And at least if I'm not misunderstanding, that is one of the conversations, I guess, that already has an intention or decision behind it for him to be there this week to pursue bowl eligibility and then possibly sitting in Austin, I guess still with the opportunity to play a bowl game. But is that somewhat lined up correctly?
Yeah, it is an interesting scenario. He can play one more regular season game. If he does more than that, then he has one less full year to play. Joey I think that the way that they've kind of lined it up, I think that they're going to play him in this game this weekend and then not play him in Austin. Even if you lose this game this weekend, I don't think that they will, because I think it's easy to be selfish right now and say, man, we need all of our best hands on deck. They're just not going to waste the kids a full year when you could look at the opportunity to have 12 games of Jacob Rodriguez versus one little blip, they're not going to, because I think probably Jacob would love to be here for, more years because I think he'd have, if he plays in just the one more game, I think he has 2 full years still left here. And I just, otherwise I think he goes into next year as next year would be his last one. So yeah, that's the, and as we talk about these red shirts, and things, none of this applies. Like if you were to make it to the Big 12 championship game, if you were to make it to the college football playoff, or you make it to a bowl game, whatever, everybody on your roster is allowed to play in those scenarios. Doesn't affect a red shirt. It doesn't affect it's almost like that's the reset button and like everybody starts fresh. But yeah, you can play whoever you want in those games. This is regular season only. And just to so John Curry, I think, played some special teams in the last several weeks. And I think he's hit his 4 games. So he's now going to be shut down, the linebacker from Lubbock Coronado. And now you will have Marcus Ramon Edwards, who I don't think has played yet. He's the young man that played here at Trinity, the private school here in Lubbock. And now he's going to get a chance to play some special teams and do some things in the last couple of games. Like Brady Boyd, who was your backup quarterback there at BYU. They've been trying to redshirt him. I think he could have potentially helped at receiver, but they haven't purposely played him just because, they're trying to, I don't know, their classes are all like, they got too many guys in the same year. They're going to leave at the same time. And so they're trying to stagger it a bit. So they're able to kind of remove Brady Boyd from that. But I think he can now play in the last, couple of games. They may do that with him where they kind of sneak him out there a little bit and let him play, and he'll still preserve his season. But there's several, little decisions like that they've had to play with some freshmen. But you've played a lot of freshmen, and I don't think they've really done a whole lot with the freshmen on offense, because there's too many guys in front of them, and the need hasn't necessarily been there, or there's not been anybody there waiting in the wings that's just like, holy cow, we got to figure out a way to get this dude on. That person just hasn't existed from a receiver standpoint. You certainly haven't had a no lineman. There's not a running back, or anything, because Taj has been getting the bulk of those carries. Jake Strong obviously was an exception, but So anyways, I think
that could change at receiver maybe next year. Freshman impact
from day one. I mean,
and yeah, I guess defensively, I know Mike Dingle was on that list. He's been shut down for a while. I'm trying to think these other freshmen that were involved. They're playing the full year, right? I mean, they're not even in the zone anymore, I guess.
Ain't no red shirts for some of these cats, man. Yeah, like Dylan Spencer.
At least this time around, right? I mean, in years to come.
I do think I'd have to go check. I think Chapman Lewis may. I'm not sure. He may have already checked the box, but I think there was some thought at one time. I'd have to go check the participation chart to be sure, but like Jordan Sanford, Brennan Jordan, Dylan Spencer, they're for sure. Like they no red shirt for those guys. Chapman Lewis is a maybe. I need to check that. I know I'm forgetting some others on defense, but you get the idea. They've played a lot of. We mentioned Curry. We mentioned Dingle. They played a lot more. Amir Washington, I think, has gotten a little run on occasion. Who's a D tackle. There's some others that, but a lot of young, because Joey will tell you, weird roster, really old and then really young. We talked about this all summer long last year. Is a fascinating, but love that they've gotten a lot of these young guys some PT, man, because now you won't be as, as inexperienced as you could have been going into next season.
Yeah, you've had to lean on them big time. They've done some good things for you, but also still hoping that that's going to pay off in a big way in the near future. All right, good stuff and interesting stuff remaining as you head into a week where I suppose Jacob Rodriguez will make an appearance, and then we'll be without on the other side. But hopefully you've cleaned up an opportunity for him to then rejoin in the postseason if you're qualifying for a bowl game. So a whole lot to pay attention to and some new wrinkles, obviously, to be managed in a different kind of era now as you roll through a season. All right, be on the lookout coming up, just a few hours away. We'll have a host primer to set the table for you tonight as the Red Raiders get back together from United Supermarkets Arena, and then we're back at it one more again, to use an industry term, to get you set for Red Raiders and UCF Saturday afternoon. Hope you will join us for all of the above. Chris, enjoyed it as always, man. Thanks for the time.
Absolutely.
Subscribe on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts so you never miss an episode, and we'll see you right back here for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.